The void of deep space rippled with impossible geometry as the Zarkov battle cruiser materialized. Its obsidian hull stretched nearly 12 kilometers, a monument to technological superiority that had crushed 1,000 civilizations. Fractalized energy conduits pulsed along its exterior, each glowing node a testament to centuries of unchallenged galactic dominance. Admiral Krelak studied the holographic display, six-fingered hands moving with practiced precision. Pale lavender skin stretched tight across angular features, eyes a deep crimson that had witnessed the fall of countless species. This moment was routine, a choreographed dance of subjugation that the Zarkov had perfected over millennia. Earth hung before them, a blue-green marble suspended in darkness, looking almost fragile. Preliminary scans had revealed a primitive species still locked in planetary conflicts, barely understanding the most basic principles of faster-than-light travel. Their technological infrastructure was a joke: scattered satellite networks, rudimentary quantum computing experiments, and nuclear technologies that were little more than children's toys compared to Zarkov engineering. "Prepare standard transmission," Krelak commanded, his translator rendering the complex clicks and warbles of the Zarkov language into a cold, mechanical standard communication protocol. Sub-Commander Vexnera approached, mandibles clicking with a hint of uncertainty. "Admiral, our long-range sensors are detecting anomalies. The planetary defense networks are responding in ways our predictive models cannot calculate." Krelak dismissed the concern with a wave. Every species said something similar in their final moments. Humanity would be no different. The transmission began, a precise, mathematically constructed message that had broken the spirit of civilizations across 3 galactic quadrants. It was neither a request nor a negotiation, but a clinical declaration of inevitable submission. To Earth Global Defense Command. From Zarkov Hegemony Diplomatic Corps. Directive of immediate planetary surrender. Your civilization has been evaluated and found insufficient for continued independent existence. You will 1. Disable all planetary defense systems. 2. Prepare infrastructure for immediate Zarkov occupation. 3. Surrender all technological and biological resources. 4. Accept reclassification as Category 7 Sergal species. Resistance is mathematically proven to be futile. Compliance ensures minimal casualties. Response required within 72 standard galactic time units. The message transmitted across multiple quantum communication bands, designed to penetrate any conceivable planetary defense network. Krelak allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. 37 seconds. That was the average time it took for a species to respond with surrender after receiving this transmission. 37 seconds. 1 minute passed. Then 5. 10 minutes elapsed, and the bridge of the massive cruiser grew uncomfortably silent. Sub-Commander Vexnera's communication arrays began to light up with unexpected data streams. Not a surrender signal, not a defensive transmission. Something else entirely. "Admiral." Vexnera's translator struggled to convey the emotion. "We're receiving multiple responses." The first transmission came from what appeared to be a personal communication device. A human, young, perhaps in their late 20s, wearing what looked like an informal military uniform, sitting in what seemed to be a control room filled with holographic displays. "Hey there," the human said, a slight smile playing across his lips. "Got your message. We have some thoughts." Another transmission cut in. A woman, older, with steel in her eyes and a complex mathematical equation tattooed visibly on her neck. "Mathematically futile," she said, one eyebrow raised. "That's adorable." More transmissions began flooding in, not from a unified command structure, but from seemingly random locations: military bases, research facilities, what appeared to be university laboratories, private communication networks. Each transmission carried the same underlying message: bring it on. Krelak felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Uncertainty. The routine had been broken. Something was very, very different about humanity. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the Advanced Research Integration Laboratory buzzed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Michael Harrison stood before a holographic display that seemed to breathe with living information, his fingers tracing complex quantum algorithms that danced between possibility and certainty. The alien transmission had triggered something unprecedented. Scattered across the globe, humanity's most brilliant minds were no longer working in isolation. The Zarkov invasion alert had activated a network years in the making, a collaborative system that merged the most cutting-edge research from every corner of human innovation. In Tokyo, Dr. Emiko Seto manipulated quantum entanglement networks that could communicate faster than light. Her fingers moved like a concert pianist, each gesture restructuring communication protocols that would have taken the Zarkov centuries to comprehend. Beside her, a wall of screens displayed real-time data from research stations in Brazil, Canada, South Africa, and a dozen other countries. Quantum resonance at 97.3% stability, she muttered, a slight smile crossing her lips. The aliens had no idea what was coming. Back in the mountain facility, Michael Harrison watched as adaptive nanite networks began to crystallize around holographic representations of Earth's defense systems. Each microscopic machine was more than a simple technological component. It was a living, thinking unit capable of instantaneous adaptation and collective problem-solving. The nanites were humanity's secret weapon. Developed through decades of covert research, these microscopic machines could transform entire technological landscapes in milliseconds. They didn't just defend. They learned, evolved, and anticipated. Where traditional military technology saw threats as binary problems, these nanites saw complex ecosystems of potential solutions. A communication pinged on Harrison's display. General Rebecca Torres from the United Defense Command. "We're ready to show them what human innovation really means," her message read. Across the Pacific, in a classified research facility near Beijing, Dr. Wei Zong completed the final calibrations on a project that had been decades in development. Quantum computing had always been humanity's theoretical playground, but now it would become a weapon of unprecedented sophistication. The system Zhang had developed wasn't just a computer. It was a predictive engine that could model complex scenarios with such accuracy that it bordered on precognition. Every possible alien strategic movement was already mapped, analyzed, and countered before the Zarkov could even initiate their attack protocols. Orbital defense platforms, once considered static defensive structures, began to transform. Adaptive shielding technologies developed from deep-sea research merged with advanced material sciences. Graphene-based quantum communication nodes integrated with artificial intelligence systems that could think and react faster than any biological intelligence. In Montreal, a team of neural network specialists worked on something even more radical. They were developing communication interfaces that could translate and predict alien communication patterns in real time. Not just translation, but a deep understanding of strategic and psychological motivations. The Zarkov believed they were dealing with a primitive species. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Each research facility, each team, each individual working on the project understood something profound. This wasn't just about defending Earth. This was about demonstrating humanity's potential to a galaxy that had underestimated them for far too long. Back in the mountain laboratory, Michael Harrison activated the final synchronization protocol. Billions of nanites across the planet's defense networks came alive, creating a living, breathing technological organism that was more than the sum of its parts. The quantum communication network hummed with potential energy. Humanity was ready. The aliens had no idea what was coming. The war room of the Global Intelligence Coordination Center pulsed with a controlled intensity that bordered on orchestral precision. General Rebecca Torres stood at the center of a holographic display that mapped the psychological landscape of the entire Zarkov invasion force. Her team wasn't just preparing a military response. They were conducting the surgical strike against the aliens' collective psyche. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the lead psychological warfare specialist, adjusted his neural interface. Years of studying alien communication patterns, psychology, and advanced information theory had prepared humanity for this moment. The Zarkov believed in absolute control, in a hierarchical system that crushed individual thought. They were about to learn the true power of human unpredictability. Initiate Phase 1. Taurus commanded. Across the globe, specialized communication teams began their intricate dance. These weren't just hackers or intelligence operatives. They were linguistic artists, psychological architects who could deconstruct and rebuild entire communication networks. The first wave of transmissions targeted the Zarkov communication infrastructure. Not with brute force attacks, but with precision-crafted information packets designed to create maximum psychological dissonance. Each transmission was a carefully constructed narrative that would unravel the aliens' understanding of their own civilization. On the Zarkov flagship, communication arrays began to light up with unexpected data streams. Historical records, unedited, unfiltered. Footage of Zarkov conquests began to stream across their own communication networks. Not the sanitized victories they had documented, but the raw, uncut moments of destruction. Entire civilizations reduced to ash. Planetary ecosystems stripped bare. Billions of lives erased with clinical efficiency. But this was only the beginning. The human teams began to inject something even more dangerous. Context. Personal stories of the civilizations the Zarkov had conquered emerged, not as abstract statistics, but as living, breathing narratives. A musician from a world destroyed 50 years ago. A child's diary discovered in the ruins of a research facility. The last transmission of a planetary defense commander who knew extinction was imminent. Each story was a psychological weapon more potent than any physical armament. Dr. Rodriguez watched the data streams with clinical fascination. The Zarkov communication network was designed for absolute control, but human information warfare operated on an entirely different principle. Where the aliens saw communication as a top-down directive, humans understood it as a living, evolving ecosystem of ideas. Sub-Commander Vexnera aboard the Zarkov flagship watched in growing horror as the transmissions continued. These weren't just information leaks. This was a systematic deconstruction of everything the hegemony believed about itself. Internal communication channels began to fragment. Ship commanders started questioning decades of indoctrination. Military units that had once operated with absolute loyalty now found themselves engaged in heated debates about the morality of their missions. The perfect hierarchical structure of the Zarkov military began to crack. In orbital communication relays, junior officers began sharing forbidden historical records. Research teams started comparing notes, discovering inconsistencies in the official narratives they had been fed for generations. The psychological attack wasn't just external. It was turning the Zarkov against themselves. General Torres allowed herself the slightest smile. Humanity had learned something profound about warfare that most species never understood. True victory wasn't about destroying an enemy's physical infrastructure. It was about destroying their belief system. By the time the first Zarkov ships began to show signs of internal conflict, the psychological warfare was already complete. They hadn't been defeated by superior weapons or advanced technology. They were being dismantled by their own history. Marcus Rodriguez turned to Torres, his neural interface still humming with active communication streams. "We've done more damage in 12 hours than most species could do in a century of conventional warfare." The general nodded. This was humanity's true strength, not just in technology or military might, but in the ability to understand, deconstruct, and ultimately transform an entire civilization's understanding of itself. The Zarkov invasion was already over. They just didn't know it yet. Lieutenant Jack Rodriguez gripped the neural interface with a practiced ease that bordered on symbiosis. Around him, the drone control chamber hummed with an energy that defied traditional military logic. This wasn't warfare as the Zarkov understood it. This was something entirely new. Hundreds of autonomous drones filled the space beyond Earth's orbital line. But these weren't simple unmanned vehicles. Each was a quantum-entangled intelligence, capable of making split-second decisions that would shatter every known principle of combat. Swarm protocol activated. Rodriguez muttered, his consciousness extending through the neural network that connected him to the drone collective. The first wave of Zarkov attack ships approached, their massive energy signatures blazing against the darkness of space. Traditional military doctrine would suggest concentration of force, strategic positioning, predictable attack vectors. The human response was anything but predictable. The drones began to move. Not in formation. Not in any pattern the alien targeting systems could comprehend. They existed simultaneously in multiple potential states, quantum uncertainty made manifest. One moment a drone would be detected in a specific coordinate, the next it would seemingly phase through space, appearing in a completely unexpected location. Zarkov weapon systems struggled to lock onto targets that defied the basic laws of spatial perception. Dr. Emily Watkins watched from the ground control center, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. Each drone was more than a weapon. It was a distributed intelligence, part of a larger collective consciousness that could adapt and respond faster than any centralized command structure. Quantum drift at 98.7%, she reported to General Torres. They won't know what hit them. The Zarkov fleet found itself facing a nightmare of computational complexity. Their targeting systems relied on predictive algorithms that assumed a rational, linear approach to combat. The human drones moved like living thoughts, unpredictable, chaotic, beautiful in their mathematical impossibility. Some drones carried sophisticated electromagnetic pulse generators. Others were equipped with adaptive camouflage that could mimic the background radiation of space. A few were essentially mobile quantum computing nodes, collecting and transmitting real-time data that would be used to further confuse and dismember the alien attack formation. Lieutenant Rodriguez felt something close to ecstasy as he guided the swarm. This wasn't just about defense. This was about demonstrating a fundamental difference in how humanity approached conflict. The Zarkov ships began to break formation. Panic was a luxury of biological intelligence, but even their advanced AI was struggling to process the complete breakdown of expected combat scenarios. One drone would appear to be a simple communications relay. Moments later, it would transform into a weapon of devastating precision. Another would seem like a passive sensor, only to suddenly become a complex jamming platform that could shut down entire sections of alien ship systems. Information is the ultimate weapon, Rodriguez whispered, watching the tactical display. Aboard the Zarkov flagship, Sub-Commander Vexnera watched in growing horror. Their most advanced predictive algorithms were failing. The human drones didn't just adapt, they seemed to anticipate potential responses before they could be formulated. It was as if the drones were reading the very thoughts of the alien tactical systems. In reality, it was something far more sophisticated. Advanced machine learning algorithms developed through decades of global research were creating a combat intelligence that was more fluid, more adaptive than any centralized command could ever be. The first Zarkov ships began to fall. Not destroyed by conventional weapons, but systematically dismantled by a form of warfare that was less about destruction and more about complete systemic disruption. General Torres allowed herself a small smile. This was humanity's true strength, the ability to transform the very concept of conflict. The battle was already over. The Zarkov just didn't know it yet. Dr. Emily Watkins stood before a holographic display that seemed to breathe with mathematical possibility. The research facility deep beneath the Atacama Desert was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a nexus of quantum research that would redefine the very understanding of spatial manipulation. Spatial resonance at critical threshold, she murmured, her fingers tracing complex equations that danced between theoretical physics and practical application. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected convergence of scientific disciplines. Quantum mechanics, advanced computational theory, and a radical understanding of dimensional physics had merged into something that would change warfare forever. Beside her, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez reviewed the final calibrations. Years of research, countless failed experiments, and a global network of the most brilliant minds had led to this moment. Humanity was about to show the Zarkov that the laws of physics were more of a suggestion than an absolute. Dimensional shift protocols are online, Rodriguez confirmed. The concept was deceptively simple and utterly impossible by any known scientific standard. By manipulating quantum entanglement and leveraging advanced computational models, humanity had discovered a way to essentially hack spatial dimensions. The first test came with surgical precision. A Zarkov battle group of 17 ships suddenly found themselves transported, not destroyed, not damaged, simply relocated with mathematical exactitude. One ship materialized inside the corona of a dying star. Another appeared in the crushing depths of a gas giant's atmospheric core. The third found itself suspended in the cold vacuum between two colliding neutron stars. General Rebecca Torres watched the tactical display, her expression a mixture of clinical detachment and profound understanding. This wasn't just a weapon. This was a fundamental reimagining of spatial interaction. Coordinate shift successful, a technician reported. 17 ships, 17 instantaneous, precise relocations. No explosions, no traditional weapons fire. Just a complete and total removal of the threat through pure mathematical manipulation. The Zarkov communication networks erupted in chaos. How was this possible? Sub-Commander Vexnera aboard the remaining flagship struggled to process the impossible data streams. Their most advanced sensors showed no weapon signatures, no traditional energy discharges. The ships hadn't been destroyed. They had simply ceased to exist in their previous spatial coordinates. In the research facility, Emily Watkins began to explain the impossible to her team. "We're not breaking the laws of physics," she said, her holographic display showing complex dimensional models. "We're just negotiating with them." The technology worked on a principle far beyond traditional faster-than-light travel or conventional weapons. It was a method of spatial redirection that treated dimensions like lines of code, able to be rewritten, redirected, manipulated. More Zarkov ships began to disappear, not through weapon fire, not through traditional defensive systems, simply relocated with mathematical precision. Some found themselves in the heart of asteroid fields. Others materialized in the path of massive solar flares. A few appeared in the gravity wells of black holes. Each relocation was a perfect, calculated move, a chess game played with entire star systems as the board. "We're demonstrating something profound," Marcus Rodriguez said quietly. "Warfare isn't about destruction. It's about understanding." The remaining Zarkov fleet began to fragment. Their communication networks collapsed. Strategic coordination became impossible when entire battle groups could vanish in an instant, with no warning, no weapon signature, no possibility of defense. General Torres understood the deeper message. This wasn't just about winning a war. This was about showing the universe a fundamentally different approach to conflict. Humanity wasn't destroying the Zarkov. They were teaching them a lesson written in the language of mathematics, quantum mechanics, and pure, unbridled imagination. The turning point had arrived, and the Zarkov had no idea what was coming next. The communication hub of the Galactic Cooperative Council erupted in a cacophony of translated languages and holographic displays. Representatives from dozens of star systems watched the unfolding conflict between humanity and the Zarkov with a mixture of terror, hope, and something entirely new: anticipation. Ambassador Zara Khalith of the Nexus Concordance leaned forward, her crystalline external processors flickering with intense computational activity. Humanity's approach to the Zarkov invasion was unlike anything the galactic community had ever witnessed. "They're not just fighting," she murmured to her aide. "They're fundamentally challenging the entire concept of interstellar conflict." Covert support began to flow from unexpected sources. The Chlorian merchant guilds, long oppressed by Zarkov trade restrictions, started redirecting advanced communication technologies. The Nexus Concordance shared carefully curated quantum encryption methods, Even the isolationist Viridian clusters began to transmit strategic intelligence. It wasn't an alliance, it was something more profound. A liberation movement was taking shape. Admiral Thomas Reyes understood the bigger picture better than most. This conflict was never just about defending Earth. It was about dismantling a system of interstellar oppression that had existed for centuries. In a classified communications center beneath the Pacific, Reyes coordinated a complex network of information exchange. Each transmission was carefully crafted, not just military intelligence, but cultural data, technological insights, and something far more dangerous: hope. The oppressed civilizations of the galaxy had a message now. Resistance was possible. On the planet Meros Prime, a research team that had spent generations under Zarkov occupation began to decrypt the transmissions. Human communication patterns were unlike anything they had seen. Where previous resistance movements had been crushed by overwhelming force, humanity demonstrated something entirely different, a form of resistance that was more about adaptation than confrontation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, leading the Global Intelligence Coordination Team, understood the psychological warfare they were conducting. Each transmission was a carefully constructed narrative that did more than share information. It rebuilt hope. The Zarkov had maintained control through a simple principle: isolate and conquer. Humanity was systematically dismantling that strategy by creating a network of shared resistance. Smaller civilizations began to share their own stories of Zarkov oppression. Historical records that had been suppressed for generations suddenly found new platforms. Communication networks that had been dormant for decades began to reactivate. "We're not just fighting a war," Thomas Reyes explained to his senior staff. "We're creating a new model of galactic interaction." The support wasn't just technological or strategic. It was deeply psychological. Civilizations that had been crushed for generations were learning that submission was a choice, not a requirement. The Chlorian merchant guilds began to redirect trade routes, creating economic pressure points that had never existed before. The Nexus Concordance shared communication technologies that allowed isolated resistance groups to connect for the first time. Ambassador Zara Khalith watched the data streams with growing fascination. Humanity was conducting a form of warfare that transcended traditional military conflict. They were fighting an idea, the idea of absolute control. Reyes understood something profound. This wasn't about destroying the Zarkov. This was about creating a new framework for interstellar civilization. Each transmission, each shared piece of intelligence was a blow against the existing system. The Zarkov had believed in absolute control. Humanity was showing the galaxy that control was an illusion. As the conflict continued, something remarkable began to happen. The boundaries between resistance and support began to blur. Civilizations that had been enemies for generations found common ground. Communication networks that had been impossible now thrived. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were rebuilding the very concept of galactic civilization. And the Zarkov had no idea what was coming next. Admiral Krelak stared into the void of space, knowing this would be humanity's ultimate test. The remaining Zarkov battle fleet assembled, a last desperate attempt to restore galactic supremacy. Every ship represented centuries of technological advancement, every weapon system a testament to their unbroken record of conquest. They would crush humanity. They had to. The solar system awaited them, seemingly defenseless. No massive fleet, no traditional defensive formations, just a single blue planet hanging in the darkness, looking almost vulnerable. Sub-Commander Vexnera approached, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "Admiral, our long-range scans are inconclusive." Inconclusive was not a word in the Zarkov military vocabulary. As they approached, the first anomalies began to appear. Entire sections of space seemed to shift. Quantum calculations that should have been predictable became impossible to track. The space around the solar system began to behave in ways that defied every known law of physics. Planetary cores came alive. Not through traditional weapon systems, not through mechanical activation, but through a complex network of quantum-linked defensive mechanisms that transformed entire planetary bodies into living, thinking defensive platforms. Mars, once a silent red planet, now pulsed with electromagnetic energy that could tear apart entire battle groups. Jupiter's massive gravitational field became a weapon, its radiation belts reconfigured into precision-targeted defensive networks. The Moon, Earth's silent satellite, transformed into something else entirely. Massive electromagnetic cannons emerged from carefully hidden infrastructure. These weren't simple weapon platforms. They were adaptive systems that could predict and counter alien attack vectors before they could even be conceived. General Rebecca Torres watched from the Global Defense Command Center. This was humanity's ultimate defense, a solar system transformed into a single, living defensive organism. Defensive matrix at full capability, a technician reported. Each planetary body, each orbital platform, each satellite became part of a collective defensive intelligence. They didn't just defend. They anticipated. They adapted. They responded with a level of complexity that made traditional military strategy look like children's games. The Zarkov fleet began to break apart. Not through direct weapon fire, not through traditional combat, but through a systematic deconstruction of their entire strategic approach. Entire battle groups found themselves caught in gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist. Quantum interference patterns made their most advanced targeting systems completely useless. Communication networks collapsed as information became impossible to transmit. Admiral Krillax watched in growing horror. This wasn't a battle. This was a systematic dismantling of everything the Zarkov understood about warfare. Earth itself seemed to breathe with a living intelligence. Defensive networks that had been decades in preparation came online. Quantum communication nodes created impossible defensive patterns. Entire sections of space could be redirected, manipulated, transformed. The solar system was no longer just a location. It was a weapon. It was a living, thinking defensive network. Sub-Commander Vexnera's final transmission was a mixture of terror and profound understanding. They had turned an entire solar system into a defensive system. The transmission read, "And we are nothing but variables in their calculation." One by one, Zarkov ships began to disappear. Not destroyed. Not defeated in traditional combat. Simply relocated. Some found themselves in the heart of distant nebulae. Others materialized in the crushing gravity of neutron stars. A few simply ceased to exist in any comprehensible coordinate. The final confrontation wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration of what humanity could become, a demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to conflict. The Zarkov invasion was over. They just didn't know it yet. The conference hall on neutral ground pulsed with an energy of transformation. Representatives from hundreds of star systems gathered, watching this humanity propose something unprecedented in galactic history. Not a treaty of conquest, not a system of reparations, but a comprehensive reconstruction and rehabilitation program. Admiral Thomas Reyes stood at the center of the holographic display, his presentation a masterpiece of diplomatic engineering. Behind him, Dr. Emily Watkins and Dr. Marcus Rodriguez represented the scientific and humanitarian aspects of their proposed galactic reformation. "We're not here to punish," Reyes began. "We're here to rebuild." The Zarkov delegation sat in stunned silence. Stripped of their military might, reduced to a fraction of their former power, they had expected retribution. What they received was something far more complex. The reconstruction plan was breathtaking in its scope. Technological exchange programs would be established for every civilization that had suffered under Zarkov occupation. Advanced medical technologies would be shared freely. Educational networks would be created to help rebuild cultures that had been systematically suppressed for generations. Ambassador Zara Killith of the Nexus Concordance leaned forward, her crystalline processors analyzing every nuance of the proposal. Humanity wasn't just offering assistance. They were proposing a fundamental reimagining of interstellar cooperation. Compensation would be provided, not through traditional monetary systems, but through direct technological and cultural support. Worlds that had been stripped of resources would receive advanced terraforming technologies. Civilizations that had lost their historical records would be given quantum archival systems to reconstruct their lost histories. The Chlorian merchant guilds, long instrumental in the Zarkoth's system of economic oppression, found themselves completely restructured. New trade protocols emphasized mutual development over extraction. This isn't about weakness, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the assembled representatives. This is about understanding. Conflict is a failure of communication, not a necessary state of existence. The most radical proposal came from the human delegation's approach to the Zarkoth themselves. Complete demilitarization, but not through forced disarmament. Through a comprehensive program of cultural rehabilitation, educational exchanges would be established. Scientists from different civilizations would work together on collaborative research projects. The very concept of military hierarchy would be challenged through programs that emphasized individual potential and collaborative problem-solving. General Rebecca Torres presented the psychological rehabilitation strategy. It wasn't punitive, it was transformative. Zarkoth military personnel would be integrated into research teams. Their tactical knowledge would be redirected towards scientific exploration and humanitarian efforts. Every system of control would be systematically dismantled and replaced with networks of mutual understanding. The conference hall grew silent as the full scope of the proposal became clear. This wasn't just about ending a war. This was about preventing all future wars. Quantum communication networks would be established to ensure transparent communication between civilizations. An independent galactic council would be formed, not with power to control, but with a mandate to facilitate understanding. Dr. Emily Watkins revealed the most shocking aspect of the proposal. Humanity would share its dimensional manipulation technologies, not as a weapon, but as a collaborative research initiative. Every civilization would have access to technologies that could fundamentally transform their understanding of space, time, and existence. "We're not giving you a solution," she explained. "We're giving you a method of finding solutions." The Zarkoth representatives looked broken, not by military defeat, but by the complete dismantling of everything they understood about power, conflict, and civilization. Ambassador Zara Kileth summarized the proposal in a transmission that would be studied for generations. "Humanity has not conquered us. They have invited us to become something more." As the conference concluded, something remarkable happened. Representatives from civilizations that had been enemies for centuries began to talk, not as conquered or conquerors, but as potential collaborators. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had shown the galaxy something profound. True strength wasn't about destruction. It was about creation. It was about possibility. And the universe would never be the same again.